Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. We just saw a short video from our sponsor, Autodesk. Very exciting. Today, we have a topic of interior design within a preservation historic setting. And we have lined up a few very good speakers for today. This event is sponsored by SIDS and VDAS, as you see on our screen. Is a collaboration between the Singaporean and the Vietnamese Interior Design Association. And again, we are sponsored by Autodesk. Thank you very much. Our SIDS today would be presented by Mr. Jackie Lai, and VDAS is by Ms. Danh Tran. Also, they will be the panelists of for the following session of questions and answers. Today we have three speakers. Mr. Andrew Currie is a friend of mine who has been practicing in Ho Chi Minh City for a very long time, as long as I have, and he runs a really good practice called Out2 Design. They do international standard projects throughout Vietnam, but he's going to focus on one particular project that he's going to talk to you about that has to do with preservation. And the second speaker will be Mr. Cris Cheng. I only met him online and review his projects. Very outstanding, very great projects that in the same line of preservation, new design, intervention. And then we have a guest speaker from Autodesk, Mr. Siddharth Bolurker. I'm sorry. So there you are. You're going to have three speakers. We're going to be greeted with a lot of information. So I'll let Andrew start now. Andrew?
Okay, thank you, Hoanh, for that, and welcome everybody. Thank you also to SIDS and to VDAS for sponsoring the event. Particularly interesting to me, given that Singapore and Vietnam are the two countries that I've lived the longest time in my life, despite being born in Australia. So I'll be talking a little bit about that now. So I'll share my slides for you now. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so I hope everyone can see my screen there. So I'm going to talk about our sort of approach to adaptive reuse and heritage preservation. We call adding another layer. But to put some context to that first, I can get my slides to go forward. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about myself first, just to give you some context. So as I mentioned, I grew up in Singapore. So I lived in Singapore during the 70s, time for Singapore of sort of rapid and pervasive change, both to the economy, to society, and to the built environment. And a time where I guess modernity and the new was more important to most development than preservation or restoration of the old and the existing. I then moved back to Sydney, where I went to university and spent the 80s in Sydney working for an architect, a modernist architect called Harry Seidler. Also not very involved in preservation or restoration, was very much focused on the new. I then moved back to Asia, to Indonesia, where I worked in Jakarta for a number of years. And there again, this contrast between the new and the sort of pervasive change and old history, culture, and how those two work together, or in oftentimes how they conflict. And now, since 2003, I've been living in Vietnam. So again, you know, we see a country that has a very, very rich and ancient history, far greater and richer than the sort of modern histories of most of the countries that I grew up in. And we're a country that's very much involved in and promoting tourism. And so its history, its artifacts, its heritage, all a very, very compelling part of its interest to the world, and on development, design, architecture, and interiors. But again, there's often a conflict between the two, and those have to be balanced when you work in various sort of industries and various types of work that we do, particularly tourism, hospitality. So what I'm going to talk to you about today, I'm going to use a case study which highlights this sort of tension between the old and the new, and how we might work through design to bring a new layer of history into a historical context. So the project that I'll talk about is a project called Cuba, which is located in Hoanh, which is a heritage listed town, or in the middle of Vietnam. The project is a second project following on from a Cuba project in Saigon, which was located in the Opera House building, in the basement of the Opera House building, and became one of the best known bars in Saigon in the 90s and into the early 2000s. So the owners of the bar bought a house in Hoi An, and they wanted to create a second venue that really, I guess, encapsulated the unique experience that people were having of Hoi An. So the brief, sorry, I'll just go back. So the brief really was for us was to create a memorable experience that was uniquely Hoi An. And what we often find in our projects here is to do that whilst doing it in a world-class experience or environment. So that's often the tension that we have, that there's an expectation of world-class, but an expectation of unique experience. And this is, of course, becoming more and more pervasive in interior design and architecture as people travel the world more. So a little bit about Hoi An. As I mentioned, since 1999, it's a UNESCO Heritage listed town. One of its main features and one of its most interesting attributes, apart from the fact that it's almost completely preserved in the old town, is that it has a very eclectic past, much like Vietnam. It's had major influences throughout history, from the very earliest Cham times through then Vietnamese history, Japanese influence, even Portuguese and Chinese. So it's this blend of all of these cultures that makes the city and the experience of that city most appealing for people. And that was what we were trying to work with, or certainly trying to connect with and emphasize when we did the project. In the area, so the inspiration came from what we understood to be the most interesting aspects of the town and the area surrounding the town. They were at the time, this is now quite a few years ago, the Marble Mountains, which is nearby, where there's a lot of stone masonry as craft, and a temple that's inside the mountain, which you can see in the photo on the top left. When we were looking at the site, we noticed, observed that the way that the light entered the site was very similar to this experience we'd had of the temples nearby, which you can see on the top right photo there. Then beyond that, into the town itself, was this experience of this Hoi An houses and the carpentry and the mastery of carpentry of these old wooden houses that are throughout the city in different sort of shapes and sizes. And then again, the craftsmanship and the trade of the lanterns, the colors, even ironmongery in the surrounding areas to the city. So, this was the experience of Hoi An that we wanted to somehow capture in this bar that was kind of wanting to put itself on the map as a world-class place to go, but somewhere you would get an experience of Hoi An whilst in the bar. The house itself was empty at the beginning. You can see the picture at the top right there is the facade of the house when we started the project. It looks quite intact there, but beyond the facade, the house was pretty much derelict and abandoned for probably close to 10 years. The interior didn't exist other than the structure of the house. So our approach here was to respect the architecture of the house, the permanence of the architecture of the house itself, and consider that to be almost a restoration project. So apart from considering the interior, we just wanted to restore the house back to its original, as close as we could get and understand, to its original condition, and to make use of the local craftsmen that was still able to build these houses and repair this house. So that was the approach to architecture, and we see architecture and interiors as two different, sort of interrelated but different entities. One is permanent and one is very temporary. For the interior, much of the decoration of the interior is part of the architecture, and we sort of allowed, or the approach was to allow the craftsmen to do their thing and to sort of respect their art and their craft, and not get too involved in changing anything to do with the house. The interior then was considered to be more or less an open opportunity, or not a blank sheet, but a canvas for us to then explore how we could engage a dialogue with this eclectic historical context of the Vietnamese influence, the Japanese influence, and the Chinese influence. So we divided the house into 3 zones. The Vietnamese sort of area being that facing the street, where people would gain their first experience of the space. But then as they entered the space, and these are very long, thin houses, about 20 meters long, 4.5 meters wide, then as they moved in, they would transition through the central space into sort of a more experience of the Japanese influence in Hoi An, and then finally upstairs to celebrate the Chinese influence that it had on the city. To do that again, we tried as much as possible to work with the local craftsmen and women to build elements of the interior that were somehow bridging their trade and their craft with our interpretation of what we felt to be representative or representing Hoi An. We didn't want to do what a lot of venues there do, which is just fill the venue with Hoi An lanterns and those sorts of things. We wanted people to sort of just have a sense of discovery as they moved in and around and through the building. So you can see some of the tradesmen there that were working on the structure, and then some of the screens that you'll see later in the interior. The screen is created as an image of the typical Hoi An lantern that then is used on the walls throughout the space. So I'll now just take you through that, the project, the finished product. It was a very challenging project, challenging for us to learn how to work with the local craftsmen and where the lines would be drawn between the two of us. But I think in the end it was a successful collaboration, and it became a very successful sort of venue. So this is the building from the outside. So architecture pretty much intact, but this invitation to move inside the building and discover something that is a little bit mysterious or unexpected as you walk down the street. Once inside the building, we really tried to highlight the structure of the building and the craftsmanship of the structure, and then insert elements like the wall screens to create a zone of discovery where most people wouldn't recognize the lanterns until they were there for a while, and then suddenly they'd have this moment of discovery where they realized that what they were looking at was actually an outline of a Hoanh lantern. Other important aspect of this project is that Hoanh is subject to very bad flooding, so all of the furniture inside the venue, it needs to be movable and water resistant, so everything inside the space is loose, except for the major elements like the bar. The bar itself, again, we worked with carpenters to create a large timber bar, and then looked at the way that lanterns light is seen as you move around the city, and you can see in the top of this photo, but looked at how we could create that as a pattern on the bar, and those lights in the bar can change colors. So at any one time, as with the main space, you can see in the background there as well, we can change the whole color, theme, and mood of the space, either during the day and on different days. You can just see on the right, the furniture here is now starting to morph more towards a Japanese aesthetic as we move into the back of the building. We also wanted to bring as much sort of contemporary design into this as we thought was appropriate. So much as we worked with the craftsmen for carving out of other traditions, we worked with graphic designers and artists to come up with this artwork, which is again hanging from the walls. So it follows the same idea as the screens in the front, but changes material and changes visually to strengthen or to emphasize a contemporary mood and contemporary contribution to the ancient house and the ancient town itself. Just some more photos here of the different areas. So the main bar area where during the day the light streams in, like the photo from the temple. The middle there, which is emphasizing the Hoanh lanterns and actually has the baubles hanging from the bottom of the lantern like a real lantern does. Introduction of sort of modern materials as well, like the fluorescent mica in the table. Then on the right, more the Japanese area at the back, which is actually, it has a Japanese menu. So the dining area is at the back and takes on the Japanese theme. Then upstairs was modeled on my memories of early Singapore and the mahjong halls, where you would hear people playing mahjong upstairs. And we had a calligrapher come and paint calligraphy all through the building, all through the top floor on the floors, so that these are photos when it was just finished, but the idea was that they would be worn away and then there would just be a hint of calligraphy forming another pattern on the floor this time as you experience the upstairs space. Out into the back courtyard, we then, where the bathrooms were and an outdoor area, we then worked with the local metal makers and ironmongers to create customized taps and other fixtures and ironmongery for the space outside, and continued the Japanese sort of aesthetic through to this space as well. The basins and other elements there are made from the local stonemasons, quarrying the stone, local stone as well. So most of the elements throughout, nearly all the elements, we've tried to work with each type of craftsman that has the sort of given Hoanh its reputation for great craftsmanship over the years. So what did we learn from that? As I said, it was a very sort of challenging project. It took about 7 years to finish. Lots of challenges with the local authorities as to what was and wasn't appropriate, and the local craftsmen just learning to work with them, and of course they worked at their own pace. But I think for me, the key things when I think about heritage and preservation and how to relate to that, I've summarized here in 4 points. So for me, preservation should always be challenged. So the preservation of heritage architecture and interior design should always be questioned. For me, age doesn't automatically mean that it should be kept. And that leads me to the second point. And the reason for that is because design should always result in better outcomes. So at the same time as questioning heritage, we need to see as our duty as architects and designers the need to make sure that what we add is at least as valuable as what we take away and leave in its place. Then finally, and this is something for me, particularly as a foreign architect working in Asia, and I have done all my life, is to be aware and respectful of the local culture and heritage, and to be cognizant of its relationship with our design and how that will be viewed by all the different types of people that are potentially going to use it and see it and be aware of it, the locals, the tourists, and others that have to live and work with our design. And then finally, really important to me is the idea of authenticity, that all the work we do should strive to be authentic, whether it's in the context of a restoration, preservation, or designing something completely new, whether it's a new building or a new interior. So I hope that has been interesting. And I know there'll be some questions later, so I'll hand back to Hoanh now and look forward to the next talks. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Hello?
Hi, Hoang, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. I made an introduction and made a mistake of not introducing the organizers of the event. My apology. I jumped straight to the first speaker, so sorry for that. Please, Mr. Jackie Lai from SIDS and Ms. Danh Tran from the VDAS would like to have a few words with everybody. Jackie?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hoang. Thank you, Mr. Hoang. Okay, thank you, Andrew, for the nice first talk. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Okay, my name is Jackie Lai. I'm currently the Chair for Professional Enrichment and the Council for Society of Interior Designers Singapore, SIDS. So in my own practice, I'm currently a creative head in the Jazz Studios. So I also like to thank everyone, and the Society of Interior Designers Singapore, SIDS, is honored to work with VDAS Design Association, Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, for the IINN webinar to share on the topic, Smart ID in our heritage, which Andrew has shared. There will be a second speaker. Yeah, so for this topic, the technology has wrapped itself around almost everything we have come to know, and the interior design industry has to embrace the latest innovation in technology at breakneck speed. So how would technology have an impact to our heritage? So our Singapore representative for keynote speaker is Mr. Cris Cheng, interior architecture designer and creative director for Etcetera Design. So through this webinar, our country will hope to foster a strong collaboration relationship across our borders and hope to inspire hundreds of interior designers among our countries. So represented SIDS, I would like to thank VDAS for the support, and without further ado, I'll pass the time over to Ms. Danh Tran, Vice President of VDAS.
Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Danh Tran, the Vice President of Design Association, Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. And I'm also the founder of VMARK, the Vietnam Design Award. Our organization with the mission to build a community of world-class designers in order to promote the design know-how and innovation in Vietnam to immerse with the global design community. As all of you just hear about the sharing from Mr. Andrew Currie, and here we have Mr. Hoanh Tran, is from Vietnam Design Community part. We really like to have the voice from the Vietnam designer to join in the global talking, and also we hope that we can get the more continue to have the change for the Vietnam designer architect to join in the webinar like this. Also through this webinar, I also want to thank the SIDS, the Singapore Interior Design Society, for organizing this webinar. And also thank you for Autodesk Asian as a strategic sponsor for this webinar. We also wish all the participation to attend this webinar can observe, can attract listening from the vision and opinion from all the interior design solution, and even in building the smart city while preserving and honoring the ancient heritage architecture, especially in Asian country when we have a very, very precious the heritage architecture and also the interior. But when we come with the smart design, the interior design, we must keep the culture, we must keep about the heritage for our city. So last but not least, we would like to thank you for all the participation to attend to this webinar, and wishing the webinar will get a success. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Danh Tran. Thank you, Ms. Danh Tran. Now we would like to welcome Mr. Cris Cheng. He's the creative director of a design company called Etcetera Design in Singapore. Cris will share with us more than one projects. He will cover the work that they have done within historic setting. Cris?
Hello, everybody. Hi, thank you. Okay, my name is Cris. I'm the creative director of Etcetera Design Singapore Private Limited, and a partner and an associate consultant of Star Architect, which is also in Singapore, and we have outposts in Vietnam, Myanmar, China, Cambodia, and also Thailand. I'm also doing some movie productions and for Creative District and Startup Studio in Singapore. So mainly more on the creative business. Okay, today I would like to showcase our projects that is in the heritage architecture buildings in Singapore. So let me share screen with you right now first. Hang on. Okay, can everybody? So let me move this out. Hang on a second. Okay, this is a quick introduction of myself. Okay, and my topic today is the essence of Asia in heritage architecture in Singapore. So I go straight to the project because I have a few projects to showcase that what we have done in Singapore, mainly are all in the heritage and architecture conservation establishment. Okay. So in Singapore, there's many beautiful pre-war buildings constructed in the early 1930s, in fact, way back in history. You know, in Singapore, used to be a British EIC influence country, and then the Europe influence is very strong. We have lots of beautiful heritage and cultural roots buildings. They're all lovely, restored and made relevant for current day use purpose, especially the facade are kept intact and in original stage. Traditional reminiscence of the old buildings architecture style. Okay, each of them carry a piece of history of Singapore. However, the interior architecture expect more than often shine through this functional and unique contemporary accents. Okay, this revolutionary breakthrough in the conservation of our old buildings as a subset of modern urban planning stems from the master plan of the Singapore government since 1970s. Okay, as such, adapting old buildings for new users favor businesses such as food and beverage, retail, and spas outlets. In Singapore, we have many F&B outlets, entertainments, clubs, pubs. You know, it is very popular among tourists. Singapore, I can say, is a food paradise, and there's a few famous and popular locations such as Clarke Quay, Chimes, in fact, our Raffles Hotel are all heritage and conservation building. Today, I would like to introduce our very famous Clarke Quays in Singapore. This is what you see right now. It is our present moment of Clarke Quay. You can see in the evening scenes where all the lights, LED, and all the streets along the old heritage walk of our Clarke Quay, along the Singapore River. Okay. And this is our olden days of Clarke Quay. Okay, a bit of history. Clarke Quay was named after Sir Andrew Clarke. Okay, he is our second governor and governor of Straits Settlement from 1873 to 1875, which is under the East India Company. And you can see that these pictures over here are all the lighters, which is called a small boat. In Singapore, we call it sampan, you know, and bang boat to carry the goods from the Singapore River to the warehouse. So, of course, by the 1980s, it was everything as a warehouse was stopped due to pollutions, and the government of Singapore decided to relocate the cargo services to a modern facility which is in Pasir Panjang. Okay, all these bang boats and lorries, you know, slowly left Clarke Quay in a silent. The government then cleaned up the Singapore River. I'm sure everybody know that Singapore River used to be a very polluted and I would say a very smelly place during the 1970s to the 1987, which the project started to kick off in 1987. It was revamped and turned into a very beautiful place, a beautiful entertainment area, and in fact, we even have a lot of residential and commercial buildings are being built around the Singapore River. Okay, these plans took into serious consideration of the historical value of Clarke Quay, making it into a new, I would say, representing Singapore as an icon of Singapore, crafting out our heritage establishment as a key entertainment area. In fact, Clarke Quay, the festival village, which was named by the government, is one of the biggest conservation projects for the Singapore River. And it was officially opened on the 10th of December, 1993. Okay, I'd like to share with you a project that we have done in Clarke Quay, which is called the Keisuke Ramen. They have a very popular brand called the Lobster King Ramen, which is situated in one of the warehouse architecture of the Clarke Quay. So this is actually the inspiration that what we actually gotten. Our objective is to bring in Japanese culture, Japanese food, ambience into Singapore. So Clarke Quay as a prime entertainment location, which actually attract a lot of tourists and our local Singaporeans. So we wanted to bring that assignment to Singapore. So of course, I'm a fan of this movie called Kill Bill. I'm sure everybody have watched this movie. It's a scenes where you have all the fighting scenes in a restaurant, entertainment area, in a very traditional Japanese environment. So this is the a few of the mood boards that we actually present to our client. Okay, this is the general layout plan where we actually took out 3 units next to Zouk, and we have a vitrine, which is a glass facade that actually protect the architecture of the warehouse. And then we actually create some iconic bell, which is actually imported from Japan. And we wanted to actually bring the whole Q-Bill scenes into this eating establishment. Okay, once you enter the restaurant, you will see a well, which is a wishing well. And we actually get this bell from Japan, which is around 450 kg. It took us 1 week to reassemble the well and the bell to actually hanging down from the center of the warehouse. So as you can see, surrounding the wall, we actually prepared shoji paper to actually simulate the actual Japanese interior language. And I and my artist friend, we actually have painted all the calligraphy on the shoji paper. And we do allow our customer, who the patron of the restaurant, able to use their finger to poke through the shoji paper to experience what is inside. So behind the shoji paper are all illustration of the movie, which is the Kill Bill scene. Okay. During the opening, we received overwhelming response, and I think this project has the longest wait. I can show you this right up. 5 hours of waiting time, the longest queue in Singapore history to taste the famous Keisuke lobster broth ramen. So it was actually during the opening period for the whole entire month, and to try the famous ramen, you have to wait for 5 hours. So this is actually how we dress up the old heritage building. There's glass vitrine that actually erect from the common walkway, which is a protection of the architecture. And then we wrap around the facade of the warehouse with a show kitchen. And then we have a long bar, which is over here. And in the evening, all the backlight of the shoji paper from the left and right of the vitrine lighted up. And this is actually the setup where you will see the typical Japanese dining accents. Okay, so this is actually the Kill Bill poster behind all this shoji paper. So we actually do a touch up and patch up every 3 months to 4 months. So to keep the customer excited, and they can actually experience themselves as a ninja or assassin to actually use their finger to poke through. Okay, I will just go straight into another slide, which is also an F&B outlet. Okay, this is another project that happened in Holland Village. I'm sure tourists from Vietnam has heard about Holland Village. It is actually full of old architecture buildings. Mr. Keishuke, which is a very famous chef, which is our client, who actually created the concept of the Lobster King, which at the Clarke Quay. He loved the beautiful old buildings accents, especially places such as the Holland Village. Okay, this project is actually on the second floor and the third floor. And we actually wanted to, again, we wanted to bring Japan to Singapore. That is our main objective. And we created a big show screen that allowed publics are able to view what is happening inside. And on the third floor, it is a Japanese garden, which is called the Takade Garden. I will show you the details right now. Okay, once you enter, of course, this is a second floor. You will see a lot of torii. Torii, it is actually a symbol of Japanese, the gates at sea. So we actually created many torii to act as a handle for, rather than a handle or railing, rather than the traditional railings that we see in our stairways. So, and immediately you will see a lot of tatami cladding with all the Japanese accents treatments all over the wall, and all the way to the third floor, which is over here on the right hand side. So once you enter the second floor, it's immediately another show kitchen that chefs perform their cooking right in front of you. And then we have been using this space for VIP dining at a bar, and also a waiting area along the side, and will be a very good view for both the VIP diners and the waiting crowd. By looking at this view, you can see that this is a kitchen, show kitchen here, and this is the dining open area. Above this dining open area, we have used Japanese mats that handmade mat that cut into panels to actually cover the old air well, which is the original of the building, which actually linked to the second floor, to the third floor roof. But however, due to safety of the structure, we have to cover it up. So we treated this in a very pyramidical design that simulate the dining under the Japanese hut. So this is another view by which you can actually see the show window that is facing the main road of Holland Village. And this air well, we actually preserved this and clad it with wooden trellises that we in fact placed our aircon right above it, and we actually create air return around the cove. So on the rooftop, we have actually create a ice beer bar where different brands and labels of Japanese beer are able to be showcased over here. And we also actually get a sakura tree that put it right at the garden, which is over here. And in the evening time, the sakura tree glows. Okay, next, I would like to showcase some other few projects. Okay, this is another project in Killiney Road, which is heartland of Singapore Orchard Road, which is also a conservation building. It is actually a spa. Let me show you this in a, hang on. So this is the architecture. We actually paint the facade into black color, which of course to highlight the whole corporate identity of our client. In this spa, we actually import several material from ASEAN, like the marbles, different stones from Indonesia, and of course from Japan, Burmese teak, and a handmade plant that light and glow. And we have a private spa, the onsen, and these are the individual room, and all the doors and cabinet are being customized from Vietnam. So this is the male entrance walkway, and this is the main walkway. So this is the spa area, and it is actually right above at the roof, the open skylight at the back of house of this architecture building. So family spa, and this is the VIP area on the second floor. We have oxygen capsules, and this is actually the Gamba Yoku. And then all these stones are all imported from Mount Fuji. And these are the beautiful matsu that are waiting for you. Okay, and last, I think time is limited. I will share with you one last project. This is actually a vet at Bukit Timah Road, which is also in a conservation building. We actually restore everything into a very clinical look and antibacterial environment. It took us about 2 months to complete, and every details that we have, the curve of the facade, we all retained, and then we clad antibacterial claddings all over the place. And this is the consultation room. And the operation theater. And this is the facade, how it looked like. And we preserve everything of the architecture. And we actually are able to bring in modern establishment businesses such as a vet, such as clinic, into heritage building. Okay. I would like to preview one quick one, which is we actually doing a lot of franchise concepts and solution. This is another new project that we are launching. We create canteen of our Singapore food, heritage food, and it's going to be situated in warehouses. Thailand right now, we are planning to go into a heritage building, which is an abandoned warehouse that we are working with. We actually bring the motorsports language into this canteen. So we are simulating the F1 tracks, maps, everything in a green and high-tech environment. As you can see, it also play a very good place for showcasing feature cars and motorsports. Okay, I think I shall end my talk right now. Mainly due to time, I actually would like to showcase what is interesting in Singapore, especially the F&B and the entertainment scenes that all happen in the heritage and the conserved beautiful pre-war buildings in Singapore. I hope when the pandemic is over, I wish that more Vietnamese friends were able to come to Singapore, and SIDS were able to bring you guys around. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris. That was a very good presentation. Yeah, I wish we had more time to be able to see more. They look very good efforts for very good projects that you guys did. We're gonna wait for the questions after our third speaker from Autodesk, the sponsor of today's event. Please, Mr. Siddharth Bolurker would like to have a few words with you.
Thanks, Hoanh. Yeah, give me a second to just share my screen. All right, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to this this webinar. I'd like to thank SIDS and VDAS for giving us this opportunity to be a part of this webinar and connect with all you creative folks out there. My name is Siddharth, and I'm a senior technical specialist with Autodesk Media and Entertainment. And I'm just going to take about 10-15 minutes to talk about you know, what's going on in the world of visualization. How are firms and design firms using visualizations to tell effective stories, right? And the part that we at Autodesk are playing to enable the creators and give them the right kind of tools to be able to tell their stories via visualization. Now, we at Autodesk have seen the evolution of design data. You know, many years back, all design used to be on papers, moved towards stuff like AutoCAD, then in 3D. And now pretty much we're going towards the route of AR and VR tech. It's getting more and more pervasive. It's getting more and more popular as we move along. And one of the key components of this sort of gradual shift or evolution of visualization is tools such as 3D Studio Max. Now, 3D Studio Max essentially takes your designs out from the CAD world and places them into a real life environment. One of the you know, the top customers that we have in this space is Neoscape, and you know, I thought, what better to tell you about what visualization is all about today than to hear from one of our customers, Neoscape. Now, Neoscape is a design visualization firm that's headquartered in Boston. They are, you know, very super users of 3D Studio Max and other rendering engines, and they make use of many kinds of media to kind of tell their stories for their clients. So let's just have a look at this video, and I'll talk to you a little bit in detail about what Neoscape is all about. Let me just share my screen once again and share sound so that we have that coming through. So visualization today not only helps you communicate your design intent, it also helps you market your projects. It also helps you sell your projects, and sort of, get a feel of what the space would look like even before you lay down a brick in the construction of the site. Now, we at Autodesk, we are heavily invested into the interior design and visualization space. A couple of years back, we ran a interior design rendering contest, which got a lot of entries from ASEAN. These are some of the entries that made it to the finalist list in our interior design visualization contest. And since we have folks from Vietnam online on this call, 2 of the top 5 entries were actually from Vietnam. So we had Box Studio and Vic Nguyen Design. They're fairly well known for the kind of work that they put out with 3D Studio Max, and really stunning quality. They're able to deliver really stunning quality to the clients with their quality of visualization. Now, visualization is not just about putting out a nice looking render, it's also going interactive. So VR and AR is playing a big part of the next generation of visualization designs. Everyone's heard of IKEA, I'm guessing. It's a very well-known brand. And I'm assuming everyone has seen an IKEA catalog at some point of time, right? Whether you're in Singapore, it gets delivered to your homes. Great looking visuals in the IKEA catalog. Did you know that 80% of the IKEA catalog is actually designed in 3D, right? So all of the images, the beautiful looking images that you see in the IKEA catalog, they're actually designed in 3D Studio Max and in 3D. So IKEA started using 3D CGI in 2006 with a single chair, which is the Bertel Pinewood chair. And today, over 75% of the product images and assets, now they're working with 3D assets, are created using 3D Studio Max. So images such as this that are, a staple of the IKEA catalog are not photographed, are not set up in a physical space. They're actually created all on the computer. That helps IKEA be agile. It gives them various options in the way they want to present their media. Now, imagine rather than having to physically construct a space or a room, they're able to design it in 3D and take it across various mediums to kind of display or put it out to their clients. Today, IKEA has a massive investment in a 3D team, and they're creating more than 25,000 photorealistic rendered images per year. Now, they're also moving into the space of AR and VR, so they're constantly innovating and adapting to the changes in the visualization space. Again, these are some more examples of the kind of work IKEA has been putting out using 3D Studio Max. Again, realism is not a concern today with the kind of technology we have at our hands and the speed at which we can work at. Realism is absolutely not a concern. When I entered the 3D industry, 20 years back, these kind of images would take you days or months to kind of put together. But today, with the kind of advances we've made, we can get this done really quickly. Now, why should you add visualization to your portfolio or repertoire? Obviously, you can attract a new set of clients. You can place designs in fully realized locations. So you can combine 3D along with live action footage to kind of place your 3D designs or your future designs in the actual space that they're supposed to be in. And obviously, it helps you be agile in the production process as well. And secondly, it also allows you to improve the overall quality of marketing and push yourself into new markets such as AR and VR. Now, Autodesk 3D Studio Max, I guess most of you on this call have probably heard of Max at some point of time. It's pretty much one of the leading tools out there for high-end visualization. And we're constantly striving to put in the best tech, put the best tech in your hands. So we're making use of tech that's actually used on the Hollywood movies that you watch. So Autodesk, we've got a big enough media and entertainment division, and we're always exchanging or making use of technologies that are changing the movie world and bringing them into the design visualization space as well. So just a quick recap for those of you that are not so familiar with 3D Studio Max as to some of the strengths in 3D Studio Max when it comes to design visualization. Now, since we were talking about heritage structures and being able to, redesign heritage structures in the earlier talks, I thought it would be good to introduce you guys to some of the tech that we've already got working here at Autodesk. Now, one of the interesting kind of pieces of tech that we have is something called Recap, right? So what Recap allows you to do is essentially allows you to take pictures of any heritage structure, all right, or take a laser scan of that structure and recreate that structure entirely in 3D. Now, if you were to do that process manually, it would take you a lot of time, but via the Recap technology, all you need is a bunch of images and the Autodesk technology will kind of create the 3D model for you. So how this works in a nutshell is you go onto a real life location, you try and take as many pictures as you can with your standard camera. So it doesn't have to be a super fancy camera, just your standard camera on your phones will also do. You upload all of these images, as many images as you can, because obviously the more photographic data you have, the better your 3D model will end up looking, right? You upload it to the cloud, wait for maybe an hour for the cloud to process that, and it gives you a fully final textured finished model. Now this can be used inside of 3D Studio Max, and you can put in your design elements or your changes that you want to make and visualize the entire scene as to how it would look in 3D. So it's a really kind of interesting piece of tech that brings, complex content creation workflows to the layman. These are some of the 3D data sets that we've created using Recap. So you'll recognize some of these structures. I think this is the Bamiyan Buddha. We literally took a drone and we flew it across the statue and we captured it it captured a lot of pictures, threw it up to the cloud and got a finished 3D model of that massive statue that we have, right? So just simple stuff like being able to take a drone, take a bunch of pictures, take a bunch of images and convert that into a 3D model, and then being able to redesign that. You could very much make a 3D model of yourself if that's what you want to place. Maybe make a bust of yourself in your interior space, or if you want to create a 3D model of a wide-ranging space like a skate park, you can make use of drones to obviously kind of go over the space, take a bunch of pictures, and then use that for the processing as well. Again, works very well for large-scale or small-scale objects. So it would really help you to visualize the kind of look and feel that you want to bring to your 3D space as well. This one's really cool. It's a really intricate model, and you can see how well, even just with the use of photographs, we're able to get all of the detail captured into our 3D model. So this one's another interesting project. So a group of students and a professor went down to Italy and they were studying the heritage structures. And to help them study the heritage structures, they actually made use of Recap to kind of get all the 3D data into the computers. Yeah. Also, another addition that we made to 3D Studio Max is adding the award-winning Arnold renderer. Now, Arnold has actually won an Oscar award for technical achievement. That's the Arnold team that works at Autodesk, the developers for Arnold. So we actually acquired this piece of tech some years back for film and VFX clients, and we've actually put that into Max now. So when you buy a copy of Max, you get a license of Arnold for absolutely free, and it allows you to create really fantastic looking renders right out of the box using 3D Studio Max. We're making it more visualization friendly as well as we speak. So it's just getting easier for the artists out there to work with Arnold. By the way, if you've seen Gravity, if you watched Avengers, any of the Avengers movies, Arnold is extensively used on all of these movies that you watch in the theaters today. It's one of, by and far, one of the most widely used visual effects renderers out there, and it's absolutely free in 3D Studio Max. Now, one of the key strengths of Arnold is the ability to be super interactive. So, interactivity is a big deal with the way the computers are getting faster and faster today. We're able to get renders in very less time. Gone are the days where we had to wait for hours and hours for a particular render to finish. Today, with the advancements, with the ability to do CPU and GPU based rendering, we're able to really cut down the amount of time that we spend on rendering, and also the quality that we can get in our renders. So here we're doing a daylight study, and we're kind of rendering this interactively on the fly as well. Arnold also has a GPU rendering option. So if you've got a nice, fast, high-end GPU, you can really cut down the time it takes to render. Now, this is what I mean by a fast GPU render. It's almost like working in real time. Once you've got everything set up, you turn on the GPU, just go and select the GPU device, and literally as you move around in your scene, the render sort of starts to take effect and starts to take place. So it's really kind of speeding up workflows for all of the interior visualization artists that are out there working with these pieces of tech. And finally, game engines are a big deal. 3D Studio Max also gives you the necessary workflow to take your CAD designs from your drafting or your CAD software into a game engine or a AR, VR engine. Now, one of the use cases that I love showing clients is this apartment that we had built. So this was, I think, an apartment in LA that we recreated. So this was designed using Revit. We bought that into 3D Studio Max. We made it ready for AR, VR, and we took it into a game engine. Now, the cool thing about this design is that you can explore this with the HTC Vive, or you can explore this in VR. Now, I can teleport myself into any of the rooms, right? But because this is VR and this is all interactive, I can also interact with some of the elements that are around there. So I can turn on the television with a click, right? So I can turn on the television. I can jump into another room by the method of teleportation, and I can pick up objects in the other rooms as well. So I've the next room that I jump into, I'm going to jump in and pick up the VR headset that's on the table. Just examine that, making use of game dynamics. Not a big deal there. You don't like that, throw it away, and it'll bounce right down on the floor. But the real benefit for folks like you on the call is the ability to give some of the design decisions in the hands, when you're presenting to your client. So if they want to check out different kind of floorings, different kind of wall fittings, so on, you can make all of that interactive using VR. So if they want to see what the wall looks like with a different color, you can make the change right there and then in real time, and see the effect of your changes. So this really kind of opens up all of the possibilities when it comes to real-time visualization. Now, if you guys want to learn more or learn how to effectively use all the new stuff that we've been putting in 3D Studio Max, you can go onto YouTube. We've got a very good 3D Studio Max learning channel, or you can go onto area.autodesk.com. We've also got a Max learning path. So if you want to add that to your repertoire, you can definitely take the course and kind of skill yourself up in 3D Studio Max. If you want to write into me, and if you want to have a deeper conversation, or if you want me to come in and do a, well, obviously I can't fly into Vietnam anymore, unfortunately, till the situation dies down. But if you want me to do an online sort of talk for your studio and your artists, I'd be more than happy to. Yeah, that's my email address. You can write into me, ping me, and let me know what you thought about this talk. All right, so thank you for having me this evening. I hope that was useful. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them over chat or in the Q&A session that's coming up. Over back to you, Hoang.
Thank you, Siddharth. Pretty amazing. I'm very impressed with the recap. Really like to know more. I'm gonna search it and find more about recap. I really like the way that you show the way that it can help documenting a historic building, and also documenting almost a scientific sci-fi architecture. So it's basically a timeless device. Very, very impressed. Okay, we wrap up our 3 talks already from 3 speakers. It's now time for question from myself, and I would like to ask these questions specifically to the speakers, and sometimes individually or generally to the speakers, the 3 speakers, and also to Jackie Lai and to Danh Tran, the 2 panelists. So please get ready for the question part. This is going to take about 30 minutes. Okay, my first question is to Andrew. I really appreciate Andrew's showing us the Q bar in Hoi An. It's a really good project. In my opinion, it is safe that the authority in Hoi An does not allow any intervention for the exterior of all buildings in Hoi An. So basically, the interior design are controlled more loosely, and the interior designers are able to intervene with the new layers, intervening, adding their new design. And the contrast usually works very well for a lot of us designers. But the design interventions is easier said than done. As designers, how do you guys decide which layers to be removed, which layers to be maintained? I assume that we normally decide on these hard decisions while we adding to the new the design layers. I saw in Andrew's statement that whatever new must be better than whatever replaced. Can you elaborate on that, Andrew and Chris and anybody?
Sure, maybe I'll jump in first. Andrew here. So thanks, Juan, for the question. Great things in there. I think, first of all, it really depends on the project specifics, what the context is, what the function of the project is, what the elements of potential preservation or new are. And in many countries, that's made a lot easier when what has to be retained is regulated. One of the disadvantages we have in some ways in Vietnam and other emerging economies is that they don't yet have a preservation or conservation structure that's there to sort of assist. I mean, we'd also argue often that it hinders us because we're not allowed to do what we want, but at least there's a framework for understanding and applying concepts of preservation. So when we don't have that, it really comes down to, for me, my opinion, is looking at the context. I'll use Hoi An as the example, and looking at the amount of buildings that are there and already preserved, many of which are preserved in their almost original state, and then there's a long history of those being adapted into new uses. So for me, it was very easy sort of step to say, well, this is just another layer of new use being put to the building, allowing that building's life to extend. And that is actually sort of well aligned with the history of Hoi An. As in terms of whether that's better or not, that's always going to be a contentious issue, and should be, and people should argue and discuss and debate what's better and what's not. But again, I think just keeping things because they're old is not necessarily the right thing to do in every situation, but it's a discussion that should certainly be had.
Okay, based on what Andrew just said about the intervention of the new intervention taking place, and then on top of the regional layers, I noticed the difference between the project that Andrew presented and the projects that Cris presented. It's a matter, to me, it's a matter of scale, the scale of intervention. I see in the Hoi An project, there seemed to be like a very good dialogue between the new and the old. So to me, it's very interesting to be able to see the lantern, for example, that you show, the wooden lantern, the new stuff that brings to mind the historic lantern that you see all around town. I know in preservation, there's no one correct way. There are different ways of doing different things. But I just want to point out the level of intervention between Andrew's project and Cris' project. For example, I sense, every project's different. So I would like to hear Cris' take on this. As someone who as a colleague, I do this stuff for a living too. So as a colleague, I recognize the level of Cris' intervention, which is a lot more, which is there are a lot more new stuff in Cris' projects, and there's less dialogue between the new and the old. So Cris, please enlighten us. Can you let us know what you're thinking from my opinion?
Sorry, can you, because I'm currently in my office and heavy rain, I can't really hear your question properly.
Okay. No, it's okay. Actually, it's better if I repeat it. So I would, I'm just thinking out loud, actually. I'm talking about Andrew's project being able to have a dialogue. For example, he showed the lantern, the new carved screen with the figures of the lantern that reminds one of the historic lanterns around Hoi An. So there's a dialogue going on between the new stuff that Andrew just put in and the existing stuff that has been there. For your projects, to me, they are more of the new stuff. You have the exterior untouched, which is regulated, so we all do that, so that's fine. But what I'm saying is the level of intervention for your projects are relatively more than the projects that Andrew showed in Hoi An, and it's a matter of choices. Basically, it's a matter of where to stop. So this is not at all a critique. This is more of for argument's sake. I just want the design for yourself to clarify. What's going on. I mean, can you elaborate?
Sure. Okay. For instance, like the Clarke Quay project that I actually presented. In fact, in this development, we do have do's and don'ts, and of course, if you can see the projects, it's all covered up by a glass vitrine, and whatever that is above the glass vitrine are the so-called the main key characteristic of the building. So in these projects, we actually retain whatever it is the original architecture above, and whatever that we are creating a new establishment at the so-called lower portion of the architecture. So within the vitrine, at for example, the height of like a 4 meter, the total building height is around 10 meter, and we emphasize our so-called clients, for example, restaurant ambience, you know, dressing it up like a Berlin Wall, that kind of illustration. You know, of course, ours is more on the, for this case, is the Japanese authentic ambience, like the treatments of the soji paper, the ninja, being a ninja while eating a ramen, that kind of action. So, especially in Singapore, I call Singapore a showcase of Southeast Asia, like you know, a lot of F&B, a lot of type of spas in different tones and manners. From, for example, we have the Indonesian spa, the Japanese spa. You know, every of their so-called accent is different. So such, of course, bear in mind, we have to know that we do have to make sure that whatever we are presenting, we are designing, make sure that we comply to our codes of practices, especially in terms of Heritage and Conservation Act. Bring in the exterior, gelling the exterior and interior, bringing them from the outdoor to the indoor is important. So that is how I always like to design our projects with our client accents, starting from the facade and gelling them together with the architecture of the heritage buildings. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. I see I pick up on another point that Andrew pointed out. Is about age and style. In one of Andrew's conclusion, is something that say age does not equal value. That's very interesting because in preservation, many of us assume that the older something is, the better it is, and we should preserve it. And it's similar also for the design style. So same argument, you know, if it is a particular style, it should be preserved. I remember, you know, studying in preservation in the US in the 1980s. Many historic 19th century buildings were being demolished by the modernist buildings. And the modernists were considered, you know, the destructive force, right? But now many people are preserving the modernist buildings because they are considered historic. Andrew, you have personal experience with the Vietnam modernist era as one of your other interests. Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's an interesting one, and I think it changes with age as well. You know, I absolutely believe, you know, that there must be preservation. You know, we need historic artifacts, that without question. And you know, I also believe, you know, restoration where it adds value is certainly a good way to, or a necessary approach. But I guess I come from a modernist training, and I've lived in countries that have always gone through transformational change. So there's always this tension between the old and the new. And you know, architecture for me is and design is representative, or it should be current. It should be sort of pushing us into the future, not sort of caught up in too much nostalgia. So I think it's more for me around authenticity and, you know, keeping artifacts that are of significant value for the reasons of preservation of history and connection to history. But as an architect, you know, my role and my goal is always to design something that is going to add significant value to the current state of being, and hopefully is something that will kind of last into the future. So yeah, I mean, but it's interesting now, as you say, now that I'm in Vietnam and now that we see sort of modernist buildings coming under threat, there's kind of a nostalgia. I have a nostalgic moment when I think, okay, we should save all of those, but then it's not really what I believe. I think that they need to change just as much as any other building needs to change, and they should be fought for if they're of a specific kind of unreplaceable value. But if they can be replaced by something better, then that's progress for me, and that's okay.
Yeah, but value is a very charged word. You know, everybody has a different definition of value. So it may be valuable to a certain group and not as valuable to another group. But that's a long talk, and we save that for later. We have a time limit, and I have a few questions prepared for everybody. But I'm suggesting that Jackie and Danh, please feel free to share your inputs on these questions. Any input from anybody before I move on to the third question?
I'm okay. Yeah, please proceed. Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. Agglomeration. Every city is an agglomeration of some sort, of different cultures, right? So in Hanoi, in Ho Chi Minh City, we have traces of the Chinese, the Vietnamese, French, the American. Cities are also agglomeration of different political systems. Again, in Vietnamese cities, there are traces of the colonial era, the Republic era, the Bolshevik era, and the free market era right now. In Cris' presentation, I heard the title "Accents of Asia in Europe, Euro Heritage Architecture," and all. And then I also saw the Japan to Singapore projects that you showed, great projects. Sometimes as designers, we assume that a certain culture would be embraced. But just for argument's sake, what if some diehard nationalists are opposing the preservation of the colonialist architecture? So we are aware of what happened in the US, where they are demolishing all the statues left over from the Confederates era. And what do you think, guys?
I think it won't really happen in Singapore, especially to be honest, since the day we got independent in Singapore history, Singapore is being known with different cultures, different ethnics and religion, and we are all living harmony together. And we know that since our educational begins, we know that our histories, I wouldn't say it's a very long history, but we are actually been through the colonization, British governing period, and you can see a lot of heritage buildings such as our Fullerton hotels. In fact, Clarke Quay, our national events venue, are all being held, especially our National Day. A lot of time is being held in front of the Fullerton, and everybody know that our culture is the root, and this is our heritage, and these buildings and architecture are our accents. So and Singapore is a very popular country, where a lot of tourists visit us, and we have different ethnics, and for example, our food, you know, we have different we have different kind of culture foods, like heritage food, like Indian, Chinese, Japanese. It's all over the place. So I don't think so. Our Singaporean, I mean, just based on my own say, would have all these issue, and I think we are very proud that we have a lot of different kind of accents of Asia all over Singapore.
Thank you. I would like to add a little bit more from Vietnam. Basically, a lot of the issues that I mentioned has a lot to do with the Vietnam history of all the clashes that we have. But it's actually it's less of a clash. It's more of an interesting mix. A lot of people would assume that many people here would be against the colonial architecture during the French days, but actually no. You know, a lot of people try to I mean, people have no problem. People have no problem with that, even with the American input in Vietnam cities are also not conflictual at all. I only bring that up because it's more of a kind of a universal problem now, especially in the US, where there's a disagreement on every subject. So maybe that's unique for the US. But yeah, you know, about the Confederates flags being, or the Confederates heroes being torn down, and a lot of historic buffs would say we should preserve those Confederate statues. You know, so that's my take. Anybody else?
Yeah, I also agree with what Cris said about Singapore, because Singapore, we since the start of colonization, we also invite a lot of foreign investors, and if we have a lot of cross countries immigrations from Asia or from China, even from Vietnam, Thai. We are we have so much nationality in Singapore. Sometimes we Singaporeans actually doubt whether we do have our own local culture, because we really have too many nationality in Singapore, and we really welcome all of them. It's so used to it. It's very common to see various kinds of architectures, and even food influence is over the place. You can within a food court, you can have Thai alongside Chinese and Vietnamese, and all kind of foods within Singapore foodscapes. So even for the in terms of interior design, that we are really open with as a practicing designers in Singapore. We really have to open to different clients of different nationality who decide to reside in Singapore, and the challenges is we have to embrace all of them to relate to their like, for example, it could be a Vietnamese trying to reside in Singapore, and they want to bring in some cultures. Being Singaporeans, we are really open to that, because we've been doing that all the time. Yeah. So so we in Singapore is really very different. The internationalization is too much and too overwhelmed in Singapore, and yeah,
which is a good thing, right?
Yeah, it's a good thing, but it's just
I
that
agree with you.
overall, some people will say that we do not have our own identity. Our identity is not as strong as Vietnam or Thai. The architecture, one look is from Thai. One look, the sharp-pointed cyclists who don the white gown in Vietnam. Those are very iconic. I didn't know the proper name for it, but it's very iconic. That one look is known as a culture from Vietnam. But in Singapore, we do not have that kind of culture. We are trying to establish, and our government do try to come forward to gather some identity or try to get people together. Yeah, so being over internationalization, that's the only downside of it.
Yeah, I actually see both sides. I actually see the problem, the difficulty of your national identity, but also it opens a lot of opportunities for and options, right? So
Yeah.
in terms of design, is probably a very good place for designers to practice and being welcome,
Yeah,
and
of
not
course.
being restricted by any means. Okay, I have one last question. It's very minor because it's basically more of a curiosity. A lot of our projects that we saw today are commercial projects. So mostly F&B projects, and but I didn't see any office. I didn't see any residential, and I wonder, is it because of a decline factor, or what? Can you guys share with me on that? Maybe there are more developers, more than homeowners, who are interested in doing preservation jobs.
I would like to answer you this question. In fact, due to time, I do not have enough time to show some other project that is residential. A very good example here in Singapore, which is a couple of minutes of walk from my office. There is a heritage building which actually have converted to a condominium and shopping mall. So I think next time I'm able to show you this project, which is actually quite a famous site, which is used to be the RC, Royal Cola water factory, which is linked all the way from Boat Quay to Clarke Quay through the Singapore River and the Sub Canal. So, and of course, our government have cleaned up the canals and the Singapore rivers, and now it became actually a multi-link nature park, and this actually excite the developers. So therefore, they are doing this project, and of course, due to the pandemic, it was delayed. So I think the TOP will be end of this 2021.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, that ended our questions session, and we now will start the question and answer session from everybody. I'm looking at the Q&A on my iPad here. Issue. Someone say, this is an interesting question from Hua Do. National identity is fluid. Our cities are designed to reflect on how we want to be identified. And as with architects is very much the core of this conversation. In Singapore, architecture leads the discussion of identity, sustainable greening, health. Is that a question? Okay. Are there different levels of classification of heritage buildings? This is out to our. This question is for our Singaporean friends. Anybody?
I'm not a practicing architect, so from what I know, there isn't really clear classifications, but they do name under heritage, and they try to grade the different heritage. Like for example, it could be by year or something like that. But I not sure why it's in terms of classification. Is it regarding of cultural origin, or it could be by year? So in this case, yeah, in this case probably they only try to classify if they deem that place is under heritage protection, but it didn't really differentiate quite clearly. Yeah, probably the number of heritage building in Singapore is not as much as in other countries. Generally, we are quite a small country, so it's quite easy to compile the list of heritage building which protected by government.
Yeah, Jackie, I do agree. On top of that, just to share with you, in our government step boards, especially URA under the Urban Redevelopment Authority, we do have our website clearly shown which are the heritage, which are the conservation zone. So I would say that heritage definitely it is because of our great history, like what Jackie had mentioned, those buildings that is being built since the 18th centuries. And of course, there is like Chinatown and the Malay village, the Indian, Little India, they are all being classified as heritage or conservation. So like, for example, if you have a heritage class, there's a lot of do and don'ts, and of course there's a lot of interior I would say leeways or flexible codes. I wouldn't say flexible, but you can do a lot of things. But when it comes to conservation, all we need to do is to under the class of conservation, we have to protect the facade of the architect, retaining and preserve the essence of the building. But of course, when it comes to interior, there is a lot of free play.
Well, typically from many cities regulation, there are, similar to what Cris has mentioned, there are different levels of intervention that the government allowed. If you are if you are defined as a historic landmarks in New York City, for example, there's absolutely nothing you can do to change that building. Is a headache. But if you are listed in the historic district, so they could be like 10 blocks of historic district, then you are entitled to follow basically the exterior of the building, of the architectures are off limit. The interior you can touch. So yeah, there are different levels in Saigon. There are groups who are trying to make things happen within the preservation. People who care about preservation, but at the moment, nothing concrete yet. Let me look at the other questions before we run out of time. James, we have a question. Do we consider fusion design as original? I think this probably goes to Andrew, right? Because he's probably talking about Andrew's project in Hoanh Tran.
Yeah, I think it popped up after my presentation. So if I understand the question, just talking about the fusion of new and old as original, I think all design throughout time is a fusion of different ideas, unless you go back to some very sort of rules-based construction or design of certain buildings. But the evolution of architecture through history has always been brought about by the fusion of new ideas and the integration of new ideas and new technologies and sort of new approaches. So as it relates to our project in Hoanh Tran, I think we came up with some sort of interesting and original ways to try to have that dialogue with the history and with the artisans there. But I don't consider fusion as a new idea. That's just part of our sort of toolboxes, our box of tools as designers to deal with all sorts of situations, particularly when they involve environments that are multicultural or that span different histories. Hope that answers the question.
Actually, I'm not that clear on the question, but since the word origin is mentioned, I don't think originality is that important, when it comes to a lot of our projects. A lot of our projects, we do it as giving solutions to a particular problem, and sometimes many of our solutions are resemble the solutions that people had done in the past. So when I was in architecture school, I thought originality was something very important, but not anymore. I think whatever works best works. That's my take. Nicholas Garol, what are the operational issues for owners working out of heritage building? Kitchens, delivery, storage needs? Don't know. Anybody? What are the operational issues for owners working out of heritage buildings? Kitchens, deliveries, storage needs?
Okay, I'll jump in first, Andrew.
Does that make sense? Okay.
I'll just give my experience on Cuba in Hoanh Tran, that some of those operational issues actually pose some of the biggest challenges for the project. Not so much to do with how you would operate the kitchen or those sorts of where to put storage, but actually what caused one of the biggest problems was to try to bring the building up to spec in terms of, or up to a reasonable spec in terms of fire protection and dealing with the risks of having a kitchen inside and sort of F&B extended hours, and how we were, we had to fight for a long time to get the authorities to allow us to put a fire protection system in the building. Because that doesn't exist in any of those buildings, and so they didn't have a way to reconcile how that was a heritage building, and they didn't sort of really understand why we would want to do that. So that overlay of sort of more complex function in Hoanh Tran was a big challenge. And then at the end of the day, everything to do with that system that was metal had to be covered with timber contact to make it look like it was wood to match the rest of the building. That was the authorities' way of making it blend, which was quite funny.
Wow, that's very difficult.
Mm.
Well, I would like to share some experience doing up a heritage building, which is called the MPH building. I actually did this project in the year 2002. It is actually original bookstore. We actually converted into a school academy, and we also have put in bar, restaurants, and offices and mini lounge. We do face a lot of problems, but however, for heritage buildings, it's pretty in our Singapore government under the Heritage Board. It is a case by case discussion. So we are also able to discuss with them how we can facilitate such facilities for the usage of the premises. So from the change of use application all the way to the implementation of design and facility, it is all case by case, especially such old buildings. The building was actually being built in 1890, if I'm not wrong. And then, of course, the Clarke Quay, the main developer has actually taken over, and they have been through discussion with the authority to how to provide the basics necessary facilities such as the grease sump, the AC, the new technology in place, fire protection, etc. So another solution which I actually have shown in the slides that what we have did is to do certain claddings and treatments to in fact cover up the M&E facility while also simulate the original condition of the exterior and interior. So very fair, very case by case treatments by the government, especially for the heritage.
We're probably running out of time for our event, but I just want to say thank you to the presenting your really good projects. As projects go, they're a lot more difficult than they look. So I realized that. So from Cris and from Andrew, we are very grateful to hear your sharing your projects with us. They are all of them are very, very respectable projects. Okay. Autodesk, I learned something about recap. I'm going to make a promise to find out more about it. My love for preservation will be assisted by this software where you can draw this very complex form into a 3D file. That's wonderful. But anyway, thank you everybody for attending. And does anybody have anything to say? Jackie, Danh, anyone?
Yeah, it's a great webinar where I learned a lot from each one another. It's great to have this webinar where we learn from, where the designers learn from each other and the importance of heritage and adaptive reuse, and to know about the guidelines and the possible projects that could involve in heritage building is very insightful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi everybody. Yes, thank you very much for all the speakers today. It's really fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Jackie Lai from SITS to organize about the webinar. And I hope that in the near future, we continue to work, collaborate together and to exchange about the idea between the designer community in Singapore and in Vietnam, and of course with the other countries. Yeah, and also we really thank you for all the keynote speakers, Mr. Andrew Currie, Mr. Cris Cheng, Mr. Siddharth, and also the moderator from Mr. Hoanh Tran. Yes, to make the webinar very successful. On behalf of Vietnam Design Association, we would like to send all our thankfulness to everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hope to see you guys in person soon.
Yes.
Let's hope the pandemic will be over. I would like to go to Cuba.
Okay.
Right.
And please come to Singapore. SITS will bring you around to taste and showcase all the food.
Okay, at the Q Bill restaurant.
Yeah.
Yes, and we also welcome all of you to come to Vietnam one day too. Yes, to enjoy about the food in Vietnam, and also to take a look at our heritage from the old culture and also from the new smart city. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, we'll be looking forward.
Jackie, let's go.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.